Up next on Inside Sim Racing, getting ready to knock off a bucket list track in real life. Welcome to, I think this is going to end up being episode 4 of Inside Sim Racing. And I've got a great guest tonight who I think everyone is going to love having on here. He is a good friend of mine, and he races cars in real life as well. And he coaches with using the sims and prepares for his races on the sim. And I am so happy to have him here. His name is Dave Ogburn. Dave, welcome to this new show I'm doing, Inside Sim Racing. You've been on my old show several times, but first time here on Inside Sim Racing. How you doing tonight?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So we ask a first question on this show, and
Okay.
because you are also a guy who races cars on real world, in real life, I don't talk like the kids do, IRL.
Sure.
We're going to ask the question twice. So let's start with, how did you get started in this sport, this global sport of racing that we love?
Yeah, I got started through autocross. My dad and I went to I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, went to the Richmond car show, and there was a local autocross club that had a booth, and it was a VHS with a TV, and it was a video of an autocross. And as we all know, nothing is more exciting than a video of an autocross. But it was, it was. My dad was always into cars, and it was one of those things of how do I go from spectator to competitor, and it was our foray into it. So we started. My dad had a Mustang. I had my learner's permit, so I rode with him at autocross for half a season and checked his tire pressures and did all sorts of stuff. And then I got my first car. I got a Nissan Sentra, and I started autocrossing. And so yeah, autocrossing was really my start, and how I got hooked on this as a lifelong hobby.
Yeah. And then the second question, the second part of the first question is, how'd you get started sim racing?
Yeah, so I think it's funny. I was gonna only talk about iRacing, and then I thought, well, it really, and you think of sim racing in total, like my foray into sim racing started with Gran Turismo on a PlayStation when
Sure.
before I could drive a real car, and because I was always like I mentioned before, my dad was into cars and into racing. We watched a little Formula One and sports cars. And growing up in Virginia, we would, once VIR reopened, we would go to some races down at VIR. But yeah, Gran Turismo was my obsession. So started with a controller. And then I remember the first time I got, like I then got an Xbox, and I got the wheel with the Xbox wheel and pedal set with Forza. And my high school buddies, we'd play like games like Test Drive and Dirt, and we would, just see who could make it to the top of Pikes Peak, not like a lap time, because it was just who could make it up without wrecking.
Without dying.
Yeah, exactly. Many times I have wrecked on Pikes Peak and Dirt. And then I would say once I started iRacing, I have not done as much other types of sim racing since then, but in my coaching and race prepping, I do use Assetto Corsa or R Factor depending on a track I'm trying to learn. So I'm not I would say an absolute expert, sim racer, but I do use it as a tool, and also fun. I enjoy it, and I have friends over at my house on my simulator behind me, and I've got a lap time board over my. Oh,
Oh,
I did the
cool.
pointing thing. I did it wrong. I left. There you go. I'm not good at the weatherman thing, but yeah. So we have a lap time board, and yeah, we'll just have fun with it. We pick random tracks and have the guys over and have a beer or five, and play on the simulator. So
Very cool.
yeah, sim racing has definitely been a big part of my life.
Cool. We're going to talk about how you're using it now with your coaching, and for a really cool thing that you just did as well. But to set that up, your world of motorsports, your real world motorsports, and your job. Let's talk about that just for a few minutes here, because it really
Sure.
gives some context as to how you use the sim now, beyond just for fun with the buddies and the lap time board behind you. So tell us a little bit about what your job is, and also a little bit about your real world racing experience.
Right. So I'm a test driver in the automotive industry. So out of college, I started as a suspension designer at Honda, and then I worked for 15 years for Goodyear as a tire test driver and development engineer at Goodyear's Proving Grounds in San Angelo, Texas. I still live in San Angelo, Texas. Now I'm um, a contract test driver, an independent test driver. So I have my own business, and I have contracts with multiple companies that I do testing for. One primary OEM that I evaluate tires for, and then I have kind of a side business in driver coaching that I got into through my racing and Spec Racer Ford. So I've raced a Spec Racer Ford with SCCA since 2017 was my first season. Started in Gen 2, went to the Gen 3, and race at the Hoosier Super Tour, and have done the runoffs now probably 7 or 8 times. And I use the simulator to help me prepare for my racing. I've also used the simulator to prepare for tests that I've done for work. I've had some opportunities, more so in what I did for Goodyear than what I'm currently doing, but of going to new tracks that we were using for tire development. So I've been to my first time at Road Atlanta was a Goodyear test, Nelson Ledges, Pit Race, Chuckwalla, a lot of different tracks across the U.S. that I didn't have experience on, because it was before I really started racing. And so and living in Texas, I wasn't racing all over the country. I was more racing in my kind of local region, especially at that time. So I've used the simulator to prepare for work trips. I've also used the simulator to prepare for my own racing. And then, through my job at Goodyear, I had the privilege to compete in One Lap of America for Goodyear, which, for those familiar with that event, is you end up traveling around the country for a week, and you do time trials at is it six different racetracks. And a lot of times I've never been there before. And so the simulator becomes a big part of that. And that's why I expanded and, learned how to use Assetto Corsa and Content Manager and R Factor, and setting things up on the computer to get mod tracks and different models of tracks and cars that help me prepare for the work I'm doing, but also the racing as well.
Right. Humble brag. I love talking with Dave, because he just drops in there. Well, I've done this One Lap of America thing. Let's go to Brest, and I've done the runoffs a couple times. Let's put it out there. You're a runoffs podium finisher, so you're in the top 1% of people who've raced a Spec Racer Ford in that regard. And I'm making that up, but you're in the highest echelon of Spec Racer Ford drivers.
Yep.
And
I try.
And you do well. And we will talk about the tire choices that you made at New Orleans last year. But other than that, something I will never let you live down. And I'm sure a lot of other people won't either.
No, they don't.
But you're also, I guess, not the defending. Were you the defending? No, it was last year.
Right. Yeah, we won. Nick Galata, my mentor at Goodyear, and trained me as a test driver, and has helped me immensely in my racing, and my work as a test driver. But yeah, Nick and I won one lap overall, and the Team Goodyear is a 992 Porsche Turbo S, and it was an amazing car, and an amazing year. So it was. But yeah, that was last year. So technically, we are not the defending champions anymore, because our friends Chris Mayfield and Salil won this year in a different Porsche, a GT version.
Very cool. Very cool. So this guy's got some real honest to God real world chops, folks, and I just wanted to kind of establish that out there. He doesn't like bragging about himself too much, so it's my job is to make we get that stuff in there, and and the fact that you've got all this test driving experience, it brings just a different level of knowledge to maybe this discussion that we're going to have in the sim race world. And I think we're actually going to have you back for a second show down the road to actually talk about
Okay.
how to maybe act like a test driver while we're in the sim. I think that's a whole nother
Sure.
episode. So,
Okay.
and we got 250 episodes of the other show I do. We're going to be doing this for a long time. So having you
Sounds good.
back again will be fun. But today I've got you on because I want to talk about a specific situation that you just got yourself through the last couple of years. And it's so awesome. But so let's talk first about the less maybe fun part but still awesomely fun part of how you use the sim. And that's you use it a lot in your coaching world
Right.
when you've got the background that you have and people will come to you and say, hey Dave, I need your help. I want to go faster. I want to learn how to do this better. And you've got the background to be able to say I can help you with that. And I love that. So when you teach people, there's two ways to do it. You can go to the racetrack and be there on race weekends and work them through all of that. But as has been a theme on this show, even in the first few episodes, which I'm sure will be a theme on this show going forward a lot whenever I have someone who's also a real world racer on the show. You can only do so much at the racetrack, right? There's only a limited amount of time, even if it's on a test day, and obviously there's risk reward at the racetrack as well. So how many of your coaching students do you also work on the sim with?
I would say it's probably close to half
Okay.
that have simulators and use them, and some it's a mix. So I have not at this point done I what you would call like pure sim coaching, where I'm coaching someone to win sim
Right,
races.
right.
I'm a pretty good sim racer, but I'm not in the upper echelon of sim racers. But I use the simulator with the drivers I coach in the real world to build on some of the things that we are working on in real life. So yeah, of the 20 or 25 guys that I kind of currently work with at various, I would say it's probably half. And what we work on in the simulator varies from um, you know, really diving into technique and building awareness of how to use the brake pedal, how to use more of the track, kind of more of the fundamentals. But I would say where I've used it more has been, especially with Spec Racer Ford drivers, is in racecraft and in training for how to race wheel to wheel and how to build comfort when you are inches from somebody. And the simulator is a great place to practice that because there is the reset button. It's the
Right.
classic cliche of the difference between sim racing and real world racing. Um, and I think sometimes that gets taken as something that takes away from sim racing, but I don't look at it that way. I think the reset button is the tool that makes sim racing especially useful. Not only can I do it in my office at any time, but I also can do it in a way that I'm not risking a race car that I own or am maybe being let to drive or something like that. And so it allows you to push the boundaries in ways that it's sometimes hard to get people to do in real life. And so, one specific example was a driver in Texas, and it was a younger driver, and he was he was trying to get experience on racing at Road America, and we were going to the June sprints, and we ran nose to tail for a couple hour sessions and would trade positions and giving him experience of this is what the track looks like when you can see, and this is what the track looks like when the only thing you can see is my bumper.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to stay a foot from my bumper
Yeah.
because that's what you have to do to be competitive in the front pack of Spec Racer Ford. And I learned it the first time I went there and went, holy crap, I wish I had done this a little more in the sim because it was totally overwhelming to be in a pack of, national national champions, and I'm trying to compete with them, and they've all raced here, and I've got 4 cars behind me that want me to be behind them, and I've got 6 cars in front of me and we're in this breakaway train, and one of us is going to win this thing, and somebody's got to figure out how to be that one.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of the things that I've coached drivers in the simulator are things that I have used the simulator for myself. I would say it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, around the time that I started coaching, that I really started using the simulator more seriously as a tool for me. I would say before that, it was more, I would race, I would get frustrated with crashes or my own, like from other competitors or myself. And I was kind of that classic, like, I never gave it enough effort to get good enough and
Right.
experience enough with it to be able to use it. And then as I got better equipment and I made more of a commitment to developing my simulator at home, but then also just getting through that early period of months of like, this isn't like real racing. These guys drive like maniacs and blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. I pushed through and as your I rating gets better and you race against more experienced sim racers and um, I it has become an awesome tool because as with any of us that road race, we're not oval track guys that are racing every weekend.
Right.
There are periods of time, even though especially as an adult with a family and a job and I race a lot more than in some ways I probably should, but also like I still go a month or 2 or 3 months without racing wheel to wheel.
Right.
And I use the simulator to keep the racing skills sharp. I had a race, the last race I ran was a Spec Racer Ford race in iRacing, and it was at Sebring, so it's a track I raced at this year in the Spec Racer. And I logged in, and it was only a few guys, and I thought about dropping out because only like 6 cars, and thought, we'll see what happens. All it takes is 1 car to have a good race, and I had an awesome race with a guy from Denmark,
Hmm.
and we ran nose to tail for the lead for all 14 laps or 10 laps, whatever it was, and traded positions 8 times and ended up making a pass in the last lap to win by less than a tenth of a second. And
Wow.
my heart rate was up. I was sweating. I mean, it felt like a real race. And for me, it helps to keep that
Yeah.
aggression, but not being over aggressive, and so I through hosted sessions or using AI races or helping drivers get into racing in official series or leagues like our buddy Ray Esports in the SCCA community, of finding a community in iRacing or in your chosen sim, game of where you can get good racing practice
Right.
because anybody who is club racing, for the most part, likely has a career, likely has something that's funding it, likely has something that means that they're not racing 52 weekends out of the year. They're probably doing it 5 times or 6 times or 8 times or
Yep.
maybe 10 at the most. And using the sim as a tool to stay sharp, I think is one aspect of how to
Sure.
use it.
Sure. Back when I haven't wheel to wheel raced in 20 years. My youngster just turned 20, and I stepped away from the driving side of it because it was expensive, and as you know, having kids are expensive. So
Yes.
so I made a decision, and a bunch of other things factored into it. But I haven't done anything wheel to wheel in about 20 years. I'm looking to get back into it now that my kid's grown up and still expensive, but not as expensive. But when I did it last, we didn't have sim racing. We didn't have in-car telemetry that we have now, even at the club racing level. There are pieces of telemetry boxes that are actually attainable price-wise and usable. We
Right.
barely even had video. I mean, video recorders were so big that you didn't want to put that in your race car. So
Yeah.
we had very little tools to do this. And one of the things I'm looking forward to when I get back into it now is I have all of these tools,
Right.
and and I'm really now taking sim racing more seriously because I don't. While I want to get good at it, I want to have fun and be as good as I can on the game side of it, the actual esports side of it. I don't want to call it a game, the esports side of it. I also
Sure.
really want to use it as a tool to help uh, speed up the learning curve of getting back into doing it real life. So that's why I wanted to talk to you a little bit about coaching and the reason why it's helpful for you in that. So good stuff. And the one thing with all levels of racing, even the circle track stuff, we get to go on every weekend often to do it, is it's still expensive, and track time's at a
Yeah,
premium,
very. Right.
and the track time is relatively inexpensive in iRacing or any kind
Yeah.
of sim racing. Obviously, you could spend a lot of money on your sim rig, but even the best sim rigs in the world that most consumers have, maybe they're $50,000-$60,000, and you could do a whole lot with a lot less, as we all know. Race cars, you can't buy very many race cars for $2,000 and
Right.
have and that kind of situation. So and so I just think the cost point and being able to do at 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning or at 6 o'clock on a
Right.
you just have that opportunity. So I think that's really helpful. So um, your students who don't sim race, is it are they just like stuck on I don't want to do it? What
Yeah.
is their
I think some of it, is I work with drivers from 14 to 80,
right?
and the guys that are 70 and 80, there are less. Some of the guys I
Sure.
work with that are in that age range do have Sims. So some of it may be a little bit of an age thing of the way, they grew up or the tools they're comfortable with. But um, I think a lot of especially older drivers who have started racing in the real world first
Right.
and then try a sim, they give up on it very quickly. And my
Yes.
dad is actually an example of this. And um, my dad and I autocrossed together for a long time. My dad does track days, and um, I had simulators, since some version of it, from a bolt-on, wheel on my
Yep.
desk, up to the rig that I have now for since, maybe probably 15, 17 years, basically ever since I graduated college. And um, up until I got my current rig with a high quality direct drive wheel, a good set of pedals, triple monitors, the whole thing, everything that, he'd come visit and we'd try it and he'd go,
Yeah.
I can't. And once I got the current setup, he's like, well, this is different.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he was able to run laps and consistently, and was able to build, a way for him to feel the speed and to sort of take away that yaw sense, the speed sense, the G sense, and then replace it with vision and the info that you're getting from the wheel and from the pedals. And he now bought a simulator similar to mine, and he practices, you know, uh, for his track days, and he runs, um, uh, F1 tracks before the F1 races, and then he learns the F1 tracks before he watches F1, and
Yeah.
he has fun with it. And so I think for a lot of drivers, it's, if you don't try something that's properly set up, or maybe isn't of enough quality to give you some of that feel, they give up on it early
Yeah.
versus taking the time. Um, so yeah, for some, I mean, all of my drivers, the simulator has become a recommendation. For some, it's prohibitively expensive, and there's reasons.
Sure.
But it's something that I encourage with everybody that I work with and race with. And I think you're seeing it with the next generation of racing drivers, the 14 and 15, up to 20-year olds that have grown up with this quality of simulator, this quality of online racing. And by the time they get out of karts and run on a real race car, they've raced an F4 car and iRacing, 500 times,
Right.
and they've raced a Spec Racer Ford and an MX5 Cup car, and they've also run late models, and they've run on dirt, and they've got this huge bank of data, whether they cart it or not. And by
Right.
the time they get into cars, they've run more races than I've ever run in my life,
Right.
and they're 17.
Right.
And So I do think it is if you are looking to be competitive, whether it's in the top levels of club racing or into the kind of pro sports car racing, whether it's an SRO or IMSA Pilot Challenge, something like that. If you're looking to stay competitive with the next generation, you need to be sim racing. You need to be using it as a tool, and it is fun. I don't look at it. It's not like, um, you know, I, I enjoy working out, but also like, sometimes I don't feel like going for a run, but like I know it's good for me, from a racing point of view. But like the simulator is not work like going and running 5 miles. It,
Right.
it, it is. I use it as a tool, but it is. I do enjoy it while I'm
Sure.
doing it.
Sure.
Whether it's the racing practice or learning a new track, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I kind of there's a good analogy I think that works, especially if there's someone watching the show who does real world racing. Autocrossers, solo guys and gals who go from autocross to racing, wheel to wheel, tend to have a much better experience than road racers who go try to autocross. And
Right.
I think it's very much the same with the sim racers. If you've got real life racing experience and you try to go sim racing, it's a much harder transition to make than going from sim racing to going to a real life car, because
Yeah.
you're hoping for senses that just aren't there, and you have
Right.
to understand that and really work to do that. So and I also think you mentioned it, one thing really important which I hadn't thought about, because I just went through this myself. I spent my first 3 years sim racing on a Logitech G29, kind of the entry level wheelbase, not direct
Right.
drive,
I had
not the
one for a
best
long
pedals.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just struggled mightily. And at times I didn't really have a lot of fun doing it, but I kept on trying and still didn't really have the results I was hoping for. And then now I have a direct drive wheel, decent pedals, and for someone who's spent time in a real life race car situation, that is really, I think, so important. It's more important,
Yeah.
even, and especially now that those direct drive and pedal sets are at a price point that aren't that much more than
Right.
the non stuff these days.
Yeah.
If you're frustrated and gave up, try it one more time with a little bit better gear, and I think you'll have a whole different experience. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think if you have a friend that has a high quality rig, even if it's something outside of your price range, I live in a small town, but I actually have one driver locally that I've started coaching. He races in GR Cup, and we met at the racetrack and
Yeah.
found out we live like half a mile from each other. And I've helped him set up a simulator, and he's come over. He's coming over tomorrow, and he's prepping for a GR Cup race at Road America. And there are ways to use a simulator if you're in the
Right.
racing community. Somebody will have one. There's also sim lounges are becoming more of a
Yep.
popular business model. There's ways to get on higher quality equipment if you can't, you know, necessarily afford it in the moment. And then I think you'll see the value in it for your real world racing
Definitely.
for sure.
Definitely. All right. Speaking of real world racing, let's get to the fun stuff here. Let me take just a quick second and thank a couple of people, and then we'll come back and talk about your bucket list that you just did and
Okay,
how you
sounds good.
used the sim to get ready for it. So, real quick, this is a new show, and we've got some partners here that we want to thank. And one of them is Sim Motion. And they, of course, the people behind the Inside Sim Racing YouTube channel here that I've now worked with and have started to work with. Great people there, and would love for you to check out their stuff. I've got a link down in the show notes. And in full disclosure, it's an affiliate link. So if you do click there and buy something, the price doesn't change either way for you, but I do get a tiny percentage. So I want to be honest with that up front. And then, of course, Full Send Sims is also one of my partners here on the show. We're going to do some stuff with them as well, and really good people. If you're looking for some turnkey sim situations out there, they put a really nice product together as well. So their link is in our show notes as well. So big thank you to them. And of course, if you want to be a partner on the show, and we have opportunities for that. If you take a look on the ticker going below the screen, you'll see my email address there, briansimracer@gmail.com. Send me an email. We'll talk and come up with a plan to have you help out and be a partner with us on the show. My guest tonight is Dave Ogburn, and one of the really good guys in motorsports, and I love having a discussion with him. And he just got done with what is, for me, a bucket list that I'll probably never get to. But hey, who knows?
Who knows?
As you and I talked about on the other show, bucket lists are there because just they might not feel attainable, but someday you might be able to do it.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about the bucket list that you just checked before we get into how you prepared for that bucket list.
Yeah. So I had an awesome opportunity last month. So early July, I raced at the Nurburgring in NLS with Team Black Falcon through a sponsor, Lupi Tortilla Motorsports. So it was Judson Holt and who I've raced with in SRO and in Spec Racers, and Denny Stripling, teammate for a while in endurance racing and Spec Racers. And we did NLS race. So that's the sort of pro top level endurance racing at the Nürburgring that builds towards the Nürburgring 24 hours. We did an event called NLS Light, which was a slightly smaller event with no GT3s and no Porsche Cup cars. So we were in a BMW M4 GT4, an amazing race car, something that's in iRacing, and so gave us an amazing platform to prepare and to learn for hopefully some future racing over there. But my last trip to the ring was a year prior, where I went over to earn my permit and race in a series called RCN, which is a feeder series to the NLS. And so that allowed me to have the specific license to race at the Nürburgring. And before that, it had been 7 or 8 years since I had been. And so I think for this discussion, that's where the simulator comes in a lot, because I used the simulator to, and as a team, we used it to prepare for our trip from a driving point of view, track familiarity, but also from a racing situation point of view. So the race was a 4-hour race. We had 3 drivers. We had a full test day on the combined circuit. So this is the Nordschleife and the Grand Prix track combined, so about 15 miles in length. And it was a full test day, 8 hours, open track day with, again, it was a smaller event, so there were about 60 cars, which 60 sounds like a lot if you're at Lime Rock or Hallett, but 60 is not a lot at the Nürburgring. I mean, it felt empty. I mean, I had multiple laps in a row where I did not pass another car, which is totally unheard of there. I mean, Normally there's 100, we actually did a track day the day before, and there were 350 cars registered for the track day. Oof. And I spent half of the laps going about 35 miles an hour in a conga line of, oh my God, how many cars are on this track? Yeah. So we had an amazing opportunity on that practice day to get really high quality seat time. And then on the Saturday, we had a qualifying session. We were in a class called SP8T, which is, it's not a specific GT4 class, but it's a lot of GT4 cars, and then you can up the power. Yeah. And so there were 5 cars in our class, and we qualified 2nd and 4th overall. So there was a class called AT3, which is some modified Volkswagen Golf TCR cars that are rocket ships. And so it was kind of the GT4 and TC kind of unleashed TCR cars were the top dogs. And did our 4-hour race, had an awesome race. We qualified 4th overall, 2nd in class, and we ended up finishing 5th overall and 4th in our class, and had a great time and gained a lot of experience, a lot of track knowledge that will hopefully carry forward if we get opportunities to go over to Germany again.
So you brushed past it a little bit quickly, and the reason I want to bring it back up is because, the sim racing world, there's a lot of different ways to go sim racing. So there may be people that basically do just the oval stuff and might not do a lot of road racing stuff. You mentioned the length of this track is 15 miles. You did say miles, 15. Right?
Yeah, 25. I think it's 24 or 5 kilometers, whatever it is. Okay. But it's about 15 miles.
So for those who might not be really familiar, just give us a real quick overview of how this track layout works over 15 miles for a lap.
Yeah, so you have the first like 2 miles are the Nürburgring Grand Prix track. So this is where when Formula One races there, this is the track that Formula One uses, DTM uses it, World Endurance Championship has had races. So it's more of a modern standard kind of grade one FIA circuit, runoff, gravel traps, the whole deal. Um, Normal curbing. The Nordschleife is the green hell. It is the classic, what we think of as the Nurburgring. It is, I think, analogous to racing on a mountain pass road. I mean, it's narrow, it's bumpy, it's twisty. You get a few breaks with some straightaways, but even those straightaways, except for the Dottinger, really aren't that straight. They're just full throttle. But to me, it's the biggest driving challenge that certainly I've ever faced, and it's the most enjoyable place to get a good lap and to put a good lap together, because you have so many opportunities to make a mistake
To mess
that
it up.
it is difficult, and it's always not always in your control, because it is narrow, it's difficult to pass. So you can be 7 minutes and 45 seconds into a qualifying lap that's going to put you on pole, and you hit traffic and lose 5 seconds
Right.
because you can't safely make a pass. And so yeah, it's an incredible mix of low and high speed corners, and really challenging, like, dynamic sections with corners linked together that the numbers get thrown around, like 73 corners. I don't know how many corners there are. I mean, the 73 is, I think, the official number, but I mean, I, it feels like there's 150 corners. Because there's areas you go past that aren't a corner, but I mean, I'm sure doing a G through this corner, so it feels like a corner to me. But yeah, it's just overall an amazing challenge. And to be an American and to go over there, it's not an easy place to get to, logistically, and to learn how to race there. It's just, to me, the biggest challenge. And so when, I get the opportunity to do something like that, that's where the sim becomes very valuable, because there's, multiple sim options
Yeah.
with really high quality laser scan models. I use iRacing. I know a lot of people really positive reviews of the model in Assetto Corsa. First time I went 10 years ago for some testing, and I used PlayStation. So yeah, I would say the Nurburgring is not only my favorite track in real life, it's my favorite track in the sim. And one thing I really like that iRacing has is there is a weekly series that only races at the Nurburgring.
Hmm.
I can't remember the name of the official series off the top of my head, but it's basically, with most series, they're about a specific car, type of car in iRacing, a
Right.
Spec Racer Ford or a late model or whatever, and it rotates tracks. Well, the Nurburgring series, same track, and it rotates cars, and so every week is a new car, and I've used some of those races to get experience, because when I'm going to go over there and race, a really high level race car, that I don't want to make a mistake in. Uh, I want to have some racing
Yeah.
experience at that track, and iRacing not only gives you the ability to learn the track and to drive it and to make laps, but either through hosted sessions with friends, running wheel to wheel, or running in the weekly series, it gives you a way to learn how to race at that circuit, from the comfort of your own home.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm going to do on my Twitch channel is I'm going to do every iRacing track and every iRacing car over the course of the next
Okay.
several years, and
Okay.
invite some people on to do these with me, and we're going to give away some stuff during those processes. But when I do the Nurburgring, I'll make sure I
Yeah.
can
Bring me on.
line
I'll
it
go.
up so that you could be part of that.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
we'll schedule that one ahead of time. But when we talked on our other show, you had mentioned how you use iRacing specifically for working with your teammate for this particular racetrack. Can you help us out with that just a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, my two teammates were Judson Holt and Denny Stripling, and Denny is another top competitor in Spec Racer Ford and podiums at the runoffs, and has won in a lot of different series, but has less experience at the Nurburgring than I do. And Judson is newer to racing, gained a ton of experience over the last 4 years, and has now been, I guess this would have been his third trip to the Nürburgring. And so I was able to get, bank a solid number of laps in my testing career where I have a couple hundred, which, at that track ends up being a lot of miles and is a really hard number to get to. And so I helped both of them learn the track. And Denny, over his career, something that he's really good at is learning new tracks. So it was more helping him learn like specific things for the Nurburgring. But with Judson, it's as we had the trip last year and this year together, taking some things that we learned last year and then practicing them specifically in the sim, and then also not only just working on using data and the replay video of how you can brake differently for a certain corner, where you can carry more speed or use more track, or how to link certain corners together to get a little more time through like a Whipperman to Brunchen type section. It's it's we're also we're working on vision and where we're looking and the mental side of it as well, because it can get frustrating and daunting. I use the sim to like help build my mental picture of the track. You mentioned 15 miles. Like, it sounds like, well, how can you memorize 15 miles? And the way I look at it is, well, there's probably 20 tracks right now that I could just run in my head. And those 20 tracks are probably at least 2 or 3 miles. So I have 45 or 50 miles of tracks in
Mm-hmm.
my head at any time. So I can learn 15 miles of a track. It may eject some tracks I haven't been to in a while, and I might forget a corner, but I use the sim and some high quality video to basically refresh myself on the flow of the circuit, and then also where I'm looking, because I think especially because you have different simulator types. You have drivers using VR, you have drivers using triple monitors, you have flat monitors, you have big curved monitors. But in the race car, we're all using our eyes and looking at what's in front of us, but we're not all looking at the same thing in the sim.
Right.
And we don't all have the same quality of components
Sure.
in the simulator. So there becomes a difference when you have a teammate where you're driving the exact same car. So some of it is helping someone dial in their equipment to give them a better experience, whether that's changing some of the settings, maybe swapping out some components or changing their field of view, something like that. But I think vision is a big part of it, because I think a lot of drivers that I've worked with in the simulator, it takes some habits that you have in real life and it kind of accentuates them, especially if you're not super comfortable with sim racing.
Yeah.
So if you struggle with maybe overcharging corners, braking too late, and then popping off the brake pedal and not really trail braking into the corner, the simulator can make that even more of a problem, because you don't have the fear of braking late. So you just do it without that fear, and
Right.
you try to go faster. You're frustrated that you're 3 seconds slower than this 14-year-old who's in the race with you. And you're thinking like, man, I drive a real car and I'm not 3 seconds in real life. But I think it sometimes can accentuate bad habits that we have in the real car.
Yeah.
So it's not only, I don't necessarily use a simulator as, I brake at this point and I build references. I build references that I will use in real life, depending, if I know that the model is current and high quality, but I'll
Right.
use curbs, different parts of, like at the Nurburgring would be the Armco, certain things that are painted, certain signs. And I build, basically my mental model of how I'm going to drive the track and where I'm going to place the car. And then I'm helping Judson and Denny also building that model as well for them of, okay, you run some laps. Now, can you visualize that section?
Right.
And we use a lot of the reset point feature in iRacing. And so it's like, okay, we're going to focus on Atzenbacher. We're going to focus on, the Mutt curve through the carousel. And then you're going to run it, reset, run it, reset, run it, reset. And gives you the ability to break the track into chunks, into more bite-sized chunks, instead of, because what happens if you try to learn the Nürburgring in the sim, what happens is you end up learning the first 2 miles really well, because you wreck enough where you just reset at the beginning of the lap, and you've got those first 2 miles, man, nailed.
Yeah.
But the stuff that you basically never get to, that's on the, in the last 2 miles,
Yeah.
you
Mile
don't know. So
13.
exactly that they'll get you, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So I use some of those features in the simulator to also allow you to learn a track of that length
sure.
and break it into more bite-sized chunks. And if you can visualize the first 2 miles and you can visualize parts of another section, you can start to piece it together to when you get there, the last thing you want to do is get to a corner and go, shit,
Yeah,
is this one the
right,
tight one or is it the fast one?
right.
And I've had those moments in the sim if I haven't run the Nurburgring for a long time, and you just kind of get wires crossed, and you're like, okay, wow, I had those corners in the wrong
Yeah,
order, and that's obviously has super high consequences. So at a very simple level, it's knowing the layout of the
right.
corners, but I
Let
think at a higher level, you're building a real mental model of where you're looking and placing the car in real
right.
life.
Before I let you go, and one other thing you mentioned that I thought was really fascinating because we all get the idea of using the sim to figure out how to go faster on one lap by yourself and to learn where to where the course goes and some car craft and all of that. But you had mentioned it at the Nurburgring in particular, it's so narrow that it's hard to pass in most of this lap,
Right.
and you and your teammate Denny spent time just testing out places where you thought you might be able to pass,
Right.
and learning on the sim, which will save you money and potentially a wreck that you don't
Yeah.
make the
No,
same mistake. So tell us a little bit about that process.
yeah, so it's another tool that I've started to use the simulator for, and I certainly can't take credit for it as coming up with these sort of things. You learn from podcasts and people talk, and you kind of build like, oh, that's a good tidbit. And actually, so one way is using the AI racing tool. So if you want
Mm-hmm.
to create your own situations, using the AI racing tool in iRacing is something that we've done. And I started doing what you just mentioned of kind of running nose to tail with another driver. I used it for the runoffs last year. It's a driver I know from Ohio named DJ Alessandrini, who I think you should have on
Mm-hmm.
the show. He's a super high level sim racer, really
Cool.
good driver in real life. Um, and he's a sim coach, and I message him. I'm like, dude, I'll pay you. Get on. I want you to run an hour. Be my rabbit. Like, I know you're faster than me in the sim. I'm about to go to the runoffs, and I want to try to pass you in the simulator. And, you know, he could probably drive away from me. And I think he for sure could have. And so he
Sure.
dialed it back to where we could. And it was like, okay, this is a thing I need to be doing more often. And so instead of just running official races to try to get that magic last lap moment, run, get a buddy who's a similar pace, do a hosted session, maybe get another friend and get three of you, whatever the number is, and you create that last lap moment for an hour, and you
Right.
get well, at the Nurburgring it's only like 10 last lap moments. At Road America would be like 20.
Yeah.
But yes, so what Denny and I did is we spent a couple hours, did a couple sessions where once we were both pretty similar in pace, it was okay, I follow you for 2 laps, you follow me for 2 laps. And it was not only were we trying to work on, okay, where can I pass in real life, but I'm actually trying to get the visual of what the track looks like when I'm a foot behind somebody, because I all of my laps there were either in that RCN series I mentioned, which is more of a time trial format than a wheel to wheel, and then testing. And so I've been on track with other cars, but I've never followed a car I'm trying to race for 15 miles
Right.
or for 30 miles or 45 miles because it's 3 laps. And I'm it was super valuable because Denny and I were both in situations in our race where we spent several laps behind a car trying to figure out how to pass them. And we both had, we every once in a while, I would try to surprise him, he'd try to surprise me and send a move up the inside, make a pass, wreck both of us and go, okay, X that corner off the list of places I'm going to try to pass somebody because I've tried it 3 times and neither of us made it through there all 3 times. Or, I made it through there 1 out of 3 times or 2 out of 3, but it's 2 out of 3 really worth risking, an expensive race car. And it was super valuable to it takes somebody that's close in pace, or it takes somebody that's willing to dial their pace down to you, whatever it is, whatever you need to do. But it was, I felt so much more comfortable the first time I was tucked under a car, 150 miles an hour going into a fast corner, going, okay, I've seen this sight picture before. I know now when I need to roll off the throttle and place the car where I'm not going to be in a dangerous situation. And so I would say of all the things we did, to prepare for the race, that was the number one thing that paid dividends. Once we knew the track, it paid huge dividends in getting that little bit of wheel to wheel experience before we were doing the real thing.
All right, last question before we say goodbye.
Okay.
And there's a teeny question before. It's a 15-mile lap. About how long lap time? What's the lap time for a 15-mile lap?
So it's around 8 in the GT4 car. It's depending on the power setting, it's anywhere from 8:30 to 8:45 or 8:50, something in that range.
So, how many laps do you have in the sim around
at the Nurburgring?
At the Nurburgring.
I mean, it's got to be above 1,000. I mean, I'm over the years. I mean, for this particular trip, I probably did 50 to 100. I would say something in that range.
So
and yeah, it's a
you,
lot of time.
I
don't want to do the math.
Your wife is a saint.
Yeah, she is. There's no doubt.
I think all of our wives are saints, or our significant others who let us do this crazy stuff. So, Dave, we could talk for a long time on this, and there's so many other aspects of working with the sim, with the coaching, and how it transfers over to real world racing that I think we'll have you on again and dig into that more deeply. So, but I really appreciate having you on one of our early episodes of Inside Sim Racing, and this was just a fun conversation. So thanks a lot.
Yep, thank you. I enjoyed it.
All right, cool. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside Sim Racing. If you like what you saw, definitely click on the like and subscribe button and come back and watch us again. We'll have a new episode every single week. And check out our partners down in the show notes for Inside Sim Racing. I am Brian Belansky. Have yourself a great week. Have fun and go do some sim racing.